If you follow me on Facebook, you may have seen an article I wrote recently about how Eric and I came to lead pilgrimages to the Holy Land. When Eric and I first set out to visit Jerusalem and Bethlehem 12 years ago, we hadn't really thought much about the nature of our trip. I suppose we were mostly going as tourists to see a new place, to make new memories. I certainly didn't think of myself as a pilgrim, but many things happened on that trip that touched my life more than I expected. We did not have an itinerary. I don't even think we had a guidebook. We were both in graduate school, so we had no money. We basically relied on the wisdom of strangers and some good luck once we got there. We did a lot of the things that any Holy Land tourist would do. I don't know if people took selfies 12 years ago, but if they did, we would have taken them at all the famous places. But the most memorable part of that trip came when Eric and I gave in to a persistent shopkeeper who beckoned us from the doorway of his lonely store. We passed many persistent shopkeepers as we walked through Bethlehem, but this one drew us in. We were surprised when he offered us tea, but didn't give us the hard sell on any of his authentic olive wood handicrafts. We were even more surprised when he invited us to come to his home for dinner. Despite some nervousness about being in the West Bank on what happened to be their election day, we accepted Majdi's invitation. His wife, Sarah, cooked makluba, and Majdi, who had a vote-blackened thumb, told us stories of war and peace in his home. It turned out to be not only one of the most delicious, but also one of the most significant meals of my life. Eric and I set out on that trip as tourists. We didn't have any goals. We just had a chance to go somewhere and we wanted to go and see. But when we were set free to wander in a strange land, when we took the time to wonder at the ancient relics and the faith of the people who came to them, when we paused to encounter humanity in another, particularly in Majdi and his family, we found ourselves transformed from tourists into pilgrims. During Lent, we are going to be focusing on this idea of journey. Our Lenten texts began with Ash Wednesday a few days ago, where Luke tells us that Jesus came down from the Mount of Transfiguration and set his face to go to Jerusalem. Every story we read between now and Palm Sunday will take place on the road between the Galilee region in the north of Israel and Jerusalem in the south. The fact that Jesus is on a journey is very important to Luke. When we study the Bible, it's helpful to look for things that get repeated. If somebody says something over and over again, or if they use the same word over and over again, maybe that's a clue that it's important. So Luke says in chapter 9 that Jesus set his face to go to Jerusalem. In chapter 13, Luke says Jesus teaches as he makes his way to Jerusalem. In chapter 17, Jesus is on the way to Jerusalem. In chapter 18, Jesus reminds his disciples that they are going to Jerusalem. In chapter 19, he is going up to Jerusalem. Luke does not want us to forget that Jesus is on a journey. Jesus is going somewhere. And that somewhere is Jerusalem. This is not a vacation for Jesus. I wouldn't really call it a business trip. He doesn't carry a lot of bags, so it doesn't seem like he's moving there. He's not going to Jerusalem to seek a better and safer life for himself or for his followers, although I'm not sure they understand that yet. We already know that Jesus is going to Jerusalem to face betrayal, arrest, suffering, and death. Jesus also seems to know that this is what awaits him at the end of his journey. Yet he willingly and resolutely persists. And he invites those who want to be his followers to join him on the road, to take the journey with him. What kind of journey is this that we Jesus followers are invited to take? In our Ash Wednesday scripture, we read about some people who said they wanted to follow Jesus, but they were not able to commit to his way. They were preoccupied with family concerns or with economic concerns, so they couldn't follow. They couldn't journey with Jesus. What does it mean to travel the way of Jesus then, and what does it mean for us now? The parable of the Good Samaritan is a parable about travelers. A man was traveling the road from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was robbed, beaten, and left for dead. Other travelers, specifically some religious leaders, came upon the man. We won't try to understand why, but they did nothing. They saw him, and they passed by on the other side. They even went out of their way to avoid him. Another traveler comes by. This one is an outsider among Israel, a minority. Maybe in our modern parlance we would call him a bum, or a thug, or a terrorist, or an illegal. Much to everyone's surprise, this is the traveler who was moved with compassion. This traveler from the margins, the one that nobody expects anything from, or if they expect anything, they expect the worst. This is the one who shows mercy to the injured man. Much to everyone's surprise, this is the one who is the model of the Jesus way. The second story we read, the story about Mary and Martha, is not a story about travelers. In fact, these two women are at home when Jesus comes to them. We see Martha busy with the tasks of hospitality, maybe washing Jesus' feet, offering drinks to the disciples, making sure there's enough for everybody to eat. I know Martha's role. Mary, her sister, though, joins the men and sits down at Jesus' feet to listen to his teaching. We see many, many, many times in the Gospels when service and hospitality are celebrated. But in this story, Martha is portrayed as worried and distracted. Her tasks, even though they're good things, her tasks have become a preoccupation, so that she cannot sit and receive the teaching that Jesus has to offer. Her tasks have caused a rift between the two sisters, so that Martha has to ask Jesus to intervene on her behalf. Tell my sister to help me. Instead, Jesus affirms Mary's choice to forego worry and distraction. The sister who sits and listens, which is a role that was usually reserved for men at the time, that is the one who truly encounters the divine presence in Jesus. She is the one who models the Jesus way. Traveling the way of Jesus is not a business trip or a vacation. Traveling in the way of Jesus is a pilgrimage. It means traveling with openness and compassion toward the other, the stranger. It means foregoing worry and distraction in favor of listening to the voice of God and seeking the presence of the Holy Spirit. Now there's a tension here, because the parable of the Good Samaritan would hardly be worth telling if that Samaritan only listened to the injured traveler, but didn't give him any aid. And the story of Mary sitting at Jesus' feet and listening would be incomplete if we didn't remember that Mary was also among the women who witnessed Jesus' death, who wrapped his body for burial, who returned to the tomb with spices to tend to the body. The pilgrim way is a dance of stillness and service, a weaving of compassion for the other and attention to God that draws us closer to both God and neighbor. This is the kind of journey that Jesus invites us to join him on. It's a journey that requires no luggage, no itinerary, no budget. In fact, it's a journey that does not even require you to leave your hometown. Last weekend, Eric and I joined some other volunteers at the International Institute of New England to be Winterfest ambassadors. Our job was to meet up with some of the refugee families and to help them find their way around downtown Lowell and enjoy the festivities. Eric supervised an impromptu soccer match among some teenage boys. I don't think Eric knows anything about soccer. I walked with a young Middle Eastern girl to the slide and to the carousel and to the woman making balloon animals. In between, we talked to their parents about the homes they left behind and how they were getting settled in Lowell. When I told a Syrian man named Khalil about my favorite Middle Eastern foods, he piped up that his wife makes wonderful falafel, and he invited Eric and me to come over for lunch that very afternoon. As we sat in their spotless living room and listened to their stories of hardship and of hope, I felt once again like a traveler visiting my friends in Bethlehem. As we gathered around their table with a massive spread of falafel and fried chicken, of pita bread and Arabic salad and stuffed eggplant, I remembered the hospitality that Eric and I received from Majdi and Sarah. Sitting in Khalil's home, I remembered that you do not have to leave your hometown to be a pilgrim. The pilgrim way is the way of openness and compassion toward the other. It's the way of openness and attention to the presence of God. We could find much to fear in Khalil and his family if that's what we looked for. We could find many things that are different among us, not least our language and our religion. In our busy and sometimes self-important lives, we could find lots of reasons not to sit and listen to their stories or to see the image of God in their faces. The pilgrim way is the way of the Samaritan who shows unexpected mercy to an unlikely neighbor. It is the way of Mary who sits and listens for God's voice and seeks God's presence. May you be on a journey this Lent. Indeed, may you be on a journey for the whole of your life. And may that journey be for you a pilgrimage, even if you never pack a bag and take to the road. May it be so. Amen.